a new book called The Truth About Mohammed, founder of the world's most intolerant religion, claims that we need to stop insisting that Islam is a peaceful religion and recognize that it has urged its followers to commit acts of violence and terror for 1,400 years. The book has caused a huge controversy in the Muslim community. Robert Spencer, the author of the book, joins us now, and from Los Angeles, Adina Lekovich, who's the communications director for the Muslim Public Affairs Council. Robert and Adina, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Robert, let's start with you. Aren't you helping some of these groups that you think are fomenting disruption and violence by titling your book something as controversial as you're titling it, Truth About Mohammed, the world's most intolerant religion? I mean, I can see that CARE, Council on American Islamic Relations, would love to hold up your book as an example of intolerant American points of view.
Well, you know, Laura, actually it's just the opposite. When it comes to intolerance, the intolerance I'm speaking about was exemplified by the reaction to the Pope's words, by the murders and riots over the cartoons of Muhammad in Denmark, and so on. And what I intended to do with this book, and what I hope it will still accomplish, is a public debate about the elements of Islam that give rise to behavior like that. And that is an invitation to moderate and peaceful Muslims to discuss those elements and to try to come to some positive way to deal with them.
So I think the way some of your book has been characterized is that you don't think Islam can ever be a peaceful religion. Would you say that's inaccurate?
I don't think that. I'm not saying that anything can ever be anything. I'm saying that within the Islamic tradition and the teachings of Muhammad, there are elements that the jihad terrorists themselves point to justify what they're doing and make recruits among peaceful Muslims. And that those peaceful Muslims have to stand up to that and work to reform to address those elements in particular.
Adina, one thing that continues to come up on my radio show is this question. Where are all the moderate Muslims? Why don't they speak out as vociferously against acts of terrorism and brutal violence within the Muslim community as they do, let's say, against, as Robert said, the Pope's comments, where suddenly you had all these Muslim scholars and clerics out there condemning the Pope?
Yeah, but Laura, the reality is that the moderate Muslims are standing up. They are jumping up and down screaming against terrorism. They are in mosques. They are in community centers.
We need to hear them outside of mosques.
And you're absolutely right. We do need to hear them. And the fact is that the media needs to search out those voices rather than claiming that, as Robert Spencer does, that any so-called moderate, the only good moderate or the only good Muslim is a former Muslim. The kinds of accusations that are placed even against moderate Muslims who are doing the hard work inside of their mosques in order to promote the true message of Islam, which is one that upholds peace, justice, mutual understanding, equality, mercy. These are the teachings that Islam teaches, and these are the teachings that have inspired not terrorists, but that have inspired Nobel Peace Prize winners like Mohammed al-Baradei, like Muhammad Yunus.
Adina, one thing that also keeps coming up is this. Speaking out against intolerance in the United States, whether Muslims or Arabs say they're being profiled, you hear that quite a bit. But you don't often hear Muslims in the United States condemning, again, vociferously, loudly on television, on radio, what's happening in Saudi Arabia. Christians can't proselytize in Saudi Arabia, but Muslims can certainly proselytize in the United States. They're not thrown in jail.
If we paid more attention to the authentic discourse that is taking place every day within the mainstream American Muslim community, you would see that. But instead, when we turn our cameras towards those people who are jumping up and down in the streets, of course we're not going to hear them. If a tree falls in the forest and no one's there to see it, you know, it's the age-old thing.
But Adina, let me just get this straight.
American Muslim scholars have issued a fatwa against terrorism.
Adina, let me just get this straight. You're saying that it's the media's fault?
There is no one person that is to blame, and American Muslims,
Robert,
Muslims need to be doing more in mainstream society, and decision makers need to be doing more.
To me, there is no doubt that when the Pope speaks out, it's publicized. There are plenty of people out there, and he's just condemned.
Yes.
And Robert, I don't see that when it comes to the beheadings, the brutalization, what's happened when someone's watching World Cup in Africa, they're brutally murdered, a priest doing mass.
Right.
I don't hear those clash of civilization up there.
No, you're absolutely right. It's this, you know, the worldwide demonstrations, riots, innocent people murdered, about the Pope's remarks, and about the cartoons, and there are other incidents as well. But you don't see worldwide demonstrations burning Osama bin Laden in effigy. You don't see worldwide repudiation of the ideology of jihad that comes from the words and deeds of Muhammad. And this is what we desperately need to see if there's ever going to be peaceful coexistence on an indefinite basis between Muslims and non-Muslims as equals.
Adina, let me just ask a question. And you are a moderate Muslim voice, and you are speaking out, and I applaud that. I think it's amazing. I try to showcase as many Muslims speaking out against this on my own show as I can find. And believe me, sometimes it's hard to find them, but I do find them. One thing that keeps coming up is proselytizing. Whether Muslims will ever sort of enter this ring, if you can put it that way, of people in this country who are always trying to convert each other. You know, Catholics are trying to convert Protestants, Protestants Catholics, but Muslims really seem to have a problem when Christians try to convert them. Do you see that?
Well, there is no mandate. I mean, you have to look at it this way. Muslims, as they're ordered by the Quran, are not to work on or do missionary work. They're instead supposed to make people aware of what the religion teaches. So the idea of, of compelling others to join one faith or another goes
against... What's going on in our prisons if it's not Muslim recruitment? I don't get that, Robert. We got to give Robert the last word on that.
Well, yeah, there's a tremendous proselytization effort in America's prisons, actually, that's going on by the most radical elements that are trying to turn the alienation that the prisoners already feel to channel it toward jihad terrorism. Muhammad himself taught that unbelievers should be offered conversion or subjugation or war. Those are the only choices.
That is false. That is absolutely false.
Well, unfortunately, it's true.
Understanding and inclusion, no. And you have to look at the...
Read the Quran.
I am reading the Quran, Robert.
Chapter 9, verse 29. Chapter 9, verse 29.
And your only solution to this problem seems to be to drive all Muslims into the ocean.
Well, that's certainly not
I've never said anything like that.
That's certainly not what my
on your website I've seen otherwise.
What these people resort
well,
to
we're going to continue this at another time. Ms. Lekovich, Mr. Spencer.